This is Three Dog.
How can I help?
We welcome to the show Ashe, Lady Insanity herself, a YouTube and Twitch sensation. I would say the unofficial spokeswoman for Dragon Age. Ashe, thank you so much for joining the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been very kind dealing with our shifting schedules. You know, we tried to get this happening when you weren't on the other side of the country. What's going on right now? What's going on in your life?
So right now, I mean, Trespasser did end, sadly, and a lot of it is going through like the different theories and like the different things I can come up with as far as Trespasser and wrapping up Dragon Age. And with TwitchCon coming up, it's a bit of a whirlwind. So yeah, it's kind of hectic, but it's a lot of sleepless nights thinking about Dragon Age as usual.
How did you get involved in this? Because it does seem like for many, especially when you're talking about Dragon Age, you have one of the, I want to say, best, most coveted sort of positions, you know, the self-made job, so to speak, just sharing and talking about a game that everyone loves. So if you don't mind, you know, how'd you get involved with this?
I appreciate that. So I got started, actually, I got started with Mass Effect, and I really liked Mass Effect, and I did some videos on it. I started with Mass Effect 3, making videos on Mass Effect 3 because I didn't catch up until much later. And then after Mass Effect 3 closed up, I was like, okay, I really, really want to play a game that is similar. And then I ended up playing Dragon Age, and I loved it way more than Mass Effect. And yeah, it was just like, it got to the point whenever I liked the lore way more than the game, and something I don't tell people is that I actually started looking up the lore because one of the packs is they had one of those like trivia things where you had to answer a question and you could win prizes or anything at one of the Bioware bases, and I knew diddly squat about Dragon Age, so and knew a little bit about Mass Effect, so I was like, okay, I'll just look into it. And then I got absorbed in it, and I couldn't stop. And
so that's how it all started, eh? You just wanted to win a competition, and now you're, you know, tens of thousands of subscribers on YouTube, you know, thousands more on Twitch. For you, because I really do think it's great to talk to people like you that really kind of sit on the fence between both. Where are you devoting a lot of your attention now as someone that talks about these sort of games, as a personality, if you will? YouTube or Twitch?
I mean, I love Twitch. I've been part of its community ever since it used to be Justin TV, and I will always love Twitch. Wow. And yeah, like way back when. And this was whenever I was doing mainly, I didn't touch anything as far as like RPGs. I was mainly about esports. I used to compete in Call of Duty and Halo, and that was my spiel. So, but the nice thing is with YouTube, I really love doing post-production, actually making, you know, news videos and theory videos and make it more elegant, I guess is the best way of saying it. So, and the fact that it's not live is actually pretty fantastic.
You like the chance that you can make some, you know, cultivated and curated content.
Exactly.
What, this is just, you know, the techie inside of me. What do you use to cut up a lot of your videos? What are your mainstays?
Premiere Pro is my thing. Adobe, like all the way. I don't like their subscription thing, but I do like their stuff. Avid and like I have experience using Avid and why is it eluding me? Vegas, but nah.
So for people that watch your videos, you know, they can download that. It's not as if you have this magic material and magic access to stuff that will stop them from making that sort of stuff as well.
Oh, for sure. Like what I do is something that anyone can do. It just really matters on, you know, learning the material, also learning how to use Premiere or whatever you want to use. You can use Windows Movie Maker for all, like, that really matters. And as long as you have the passion for it, or if you like, there is a platform that you can take advantage of. All you have to do is just put a little bit of motivation into it, and then you got a product.
Now, actually having direct contact with your fans. We're going to get into Dragon Age, folks. If you're all listening and, I've already done 5 questions, nothing about Dragon Age. It's coming. It'll be here. But that direct contact that you have with fans via Twitch, I got to ask, has there ever been, as, a strong, passionate young woman talking about games that she likes, some negative feedback merely because of those previous truths?
So whenever I got started with Twitch and whenever I was doing first-person shooters, that was like a really, you'll get some really nice people and then you get some really, really mean people. But whenever I shifted into Mass Effect and whenever I shifted into Dragon Age, I don't know why. Actually, it's funny because the last time I streamed, my friend, she came in because she saw there was I think 700 people or something like that. And she was like, oh my God, I had to totally mod your channel. Oh my God, there's so many people. And she's like, dude, everyone was nice. What the heck? And it's the Dragon Age community, and I guess this also extends to just BioWare in general. The BioWare community is just so freakishly nice, and everyone's really supportive. So it's, the toxicity that you kind of hear about, usually it just doesn't pop up whenever it comes to Twitch, at least on my channel. I see it on other channels, and, it is a reality that some streamers have to face. But I'm extremely fortunate that the BioWare community is just totally, I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, they seem to be a lot more supportive. And maybe it's just even the nature of the type of people that like these sort of games. The people that really get a lot of these games, I think, need to have a certain capacity for human empathy. I don't think that you can really get as much out of, the Dorian romance as the next person, unless you have a fair bit of human empathy. And as well, we're teeing up our big final interview with the former lead writer of Dragon Age, David Gator. Ashe had the chance to listen to the interview. What'd you think? Thank you so much. You're so busy. You're all around the country, and you took an hour to listen to something that this measly radio station did. Thank you so much.
No, it was really good. I really like the questions that you actually asked because, I mean, with Gator, it's a very interesting thing because, he'll talk about the game and all that, but you just never really have people ask about the actual development and the stuff that just never, what was it? The stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor. And
yes, indeed.
You never people don't ask about that, but you did. And I was really appreciative of that.
Oh, well, thank you so much. See, Dave, someone likes me. Look at that. He's smiling from across the room. All right, so now we're going to get into it. We are going to get into it. The meat and potatoes. Time to talk Dragon Age Trespasser DLC.
I suspect you have questions.
All righty, we're into it right now, of course. That is Solus, the Dreadwolf. Just overall, what did you think of the DLC? I'd love to know.
All right, so are we talking about Solus specifically? Or
no, just DLC? Overall. What did you think of this, 10, 15 hour little last stop on Dragon Age Inquisition Land, the Trespasser DLC?
It really hit home for me. I mean, I think I've said it publicly once or 10 times, but this is the one DLC out of all, not just Dragon Age, but even Mass Effect, that I just enjoyed completely. Because not only did it just wrap it up for all of the companions, but it actually had a plot that wasn't just silly. It actually had a nice orchestration of the actual Qunari and seeing how they've been acting behind everything and just being shady characters. I have a growing distaste for the Qunari whenever I was just so nice to them in Origins and 2.
Yeah.
But I love it. I really did like Trespasser a lot.
Did you like it more than, because you played Mass Effect, you mentioned, did you have a chance to play their kind of love letter to the fans in Mass Effect 3, I believe it was called the Citadel DLC?
Oh, yeah, I definitely did.
Well, what did you think, I guess, in a comparison? Because when I was playing it, I did have some instances in Trespasser where I was reminded of the great moments that I got to play in Citadel.
I mean, I really did like Citadel because it really was the party itself was just absolutely awesome. But at the same time, it was like, what's the best way of putting it? I really liked the one-on-ones with every single person, but whenever it came to the party, sometimes it just felt a little bit like, not forced, but it wasn't organic enough for me. And the actual fight against yourself, that was like a big, like, okay, this is just, it's just a fun little thing and whatever. Shepard has a clone, spoilers, but Trespasser actually had more depth in the lore and that huge library, oh my god, that huge library itself, and knowing that it had such a lore dump that I was just like, this surpasses everything that I felt in Citadel.
Well, it's more than a lore dump, because I've watched a lot of your videos before, and you go a lot into the Elven and everything that we know about it in the established lore. This kind of blows up, at least in my estimation, a lot of what people understood about that world. We have some clips that we're gonna play from David Gator from the interview here. We're gonna start with his thoughts, and this is before we knew that there was going to be this DLC. This is before this was announced. So this was a little while ago. And here's what David Gator had to say about Solus and the end of his story.
If I think of the one cut that did occur, there was a playable epilogue. That's right. That got cut by the end. Is that you the search for Solus kind of epilogue. Wow. I mean, some players are going to hear that are going to lose their minds because they picture it being something that it totally wasn't.
Okay.
It was too much. It felt like, your end battle did have to have a conclusion, so it felt sort of misleading. But we wanted to preserve sort of the I don't know if you want to call it sequel bait. We wanted to preserve the sense of the acknowledgement of what Solus was, so that when the player hits that moment and thinks back about the totality of their relationship with Solus, they can go, oh, okay. And I mean, it totally spawns more questions than it answers, of course. And it is meant to do that, sort of okay, on its surface, this is a very villain appears, you defeat the villain, you save the day, right? That's the progression. But there was more happening under the surface than maybe you were aware. And I think that we wanted to preserve that moment of the player being able to go, oh.
That is, again, David Gator, the former lead writer on the Dragon Age franchise. So, Ashe, having a chance to listen to that, what do you think? Is that what was cut? Do you think that, he left and then all of a sudden they decided, wait, let's take this idea, run with it, and complete that concept that they might have actually had in the original game?
I mean, I think, well, I'm glad it got cut for that, if we're going to say anything, but I with it as a playable epilogue, I'm glad it got cut because, I mean, it's an amazing idea. I imagine that they thought that, hey, we'll do this, not now, but we'll do it maybe in the future, maybe in Dragon Age 4 or whatever you call it at that point. But I'm so glad that they actually brought it in for now as the last DLC because it just tied really well with what Trespasser did with the whole 2 years later, making sure that you have some kind of completion to the end of Inquisition and the end of the actual organization, the Inquisition. And just thinking about the epilogue is just giving me like the emotional trip right now.
Why is that? Why?
Because for me, it was, I mean, I don't work for BioWare. I just really follow them extensively. And how many years has it been since I started covering for Inquisition specifically? I guess it's 3 years now. And just thinking back on it, it's just I did not expect to see this day where Inquisition is over and Solus, what happened with Solus just in general, the complete lore revelations and seeing who he was and not only what he was, but what he's doing, where he's going next, and how much of an effect he has on the player, especially since, I don't know if you noticed, but in the beginning, whenever they were marketing the game, they did not touch Solus at all. Patrick Weeks was like a little clever guy. He was like, oh, he's just a simple, apostate, nice-looking elf. And he didn't talk about it at all. And then, of course, that dropped where he's the Dreadwolf and he orchestrated the Veil and everything. It's like, oh, gosh, why do you have to do that?
Well, I guess you answered a lot of this here, and thank you again for sharing your personal love for that. But this DLC included a real resolution to the Dragon Age story. That arc, or Dragon Age Inquisition story. Not the Dragon Age story itself, but the Inquisition story. Do you think that since this is such a complete ending, that it should have really been included in the game? Or do you think that it's enough time afterwards, actually in our time, from the game and outside of regular gameplay, that it kind of makes sense?
I don't think it should have at all been part of the base game. And this comes from someone who didn't like the ending at all. Or I shouldn't say at all, but I just really did not like it because I thought for such a cool character, Curfius just kind of felt flat compared to the Legacy DLC where he was like this like awesome guy and he was a complete badass, and then he was like, oh my gosh, I'm from ancient Tevinter, blah, blah, blah. But I think it was perfect giving it that like 2-year lapse to see not only where Solus is at now, but also see the other companions and like the different ramifications of your decisions. Specifically, like let's say Cole, the difference between him as a spirit and him as a human drove me for a loop because because on the surface it's like, oh my God, he got a girlfriend, or he helps oh my gosh, I can't remember her name now. Meriden.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and he helps Meriden get a boyfriend, and it's just like, that's adorable, that's cute. But then it also stems below that, and then you think, wait a second, he's a spirit that became a human or becomes an alpha spirit, whatever you want to call it. And it's just like, where in the lore has it ever happened before? All right, it hasn't. Now, what can we learn from this? And how does this apply to other characters? How does this apply to those who joined with other spirits? Or how does this apply to people who, let's say, have lyrium bodies like Liliana, which is another permutation that we can actually find out about. And it's just like, there are different levels of what we find in Trespasser that you just kind of have to step back and think, oh, crap, how are they going to put this in Dragon Age 4 and continue the story whenever there are different things that happened? And
doesn't that worry you a little bit, though? Like, specifically with the Liliana ghost thing, because that's, for those that haven't seen it, and of course, spoilers, if you haven't played the DLC yet, you should not be listening to this. But in this particular, what you're referencing there is if Liliana was killed, correct? In the previous games, at the end of this game, in the Trespasser slideshow, there's a slide that indicates what exactly. Maybe you should explain it since you seem to have a better grasp of it than maybe I do.
So, well, it's kind of weird because it's kind of the way it is that she was killed and by the hero Ferelden, and we thought that, that would be it. But she returns, and she personally thinks that it was the Maker giving her a second chance to fulfill her purpose. But at the end of Trespasser, we see that it said that Miriam called her, and the song is stale, and she needs to move on until she is called again whenever she has to fulfill another purpose. So we find out that, and especially after the Descent DLC, where we learn about the Titans and about lyrium and like all that jazz, it kind of makes you think, well, who was Liliana? Was she kind of like the divine where she was a spirit, or was she simply her own soul and she was just given another chance? And it goes into this whole, like, not existential crisis, but what was Liliana? Who was Liliana? So.
But does that reality, and again, we're getting heavy into the lore here, but does that reality only apply if, this is your take on it, of course, does that reality only apply if she was killed, or do you believe that she is actually this quasi-spirit no matter what in all the different canons?
I only believe that it will happen if she is killed by the hero Ferelden. I think if she's alive straight up. Personally, the place that I think that because of the place where she died, which we find out was the Temple of Sacred Ashes, which had major blue veins everywhere. It had a huge lyrium presence, and we also see that the blighted red lyrium was way below the Temple of Sacred Ashes as well, or it was tainted. There's a huge conversation on that as well. But because where she died, I think she is one of the only people within the Dragon Age universe that would have been given another chance the way that she died.
That's great. No, I love the chance. See, a lot of people, even who love the game, wouldn't have an opportunity to see that kind of ending. I think it's great what people like you do and other people within the community. They take those scenes, put them online, and in your case, actually make some connections. Because I forgot, where she died and how that the temple was brought up again and the different lyrium that's there. So that's the kind of stuff that people appreciate. Looking at the DLC, with Solus aside, we're not going to jump into that cookie just yet. What are some other characters and their kind of revelations that that really resonated with you, that really kind of shook you up and made you look at the world either differently or perhaps just with a little more light and happiness?
Well, I had to confess that Dorian made me cry. That was one of the
Which
where I just his going away party. That made me so tearful.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's just like having him as a friend was really like, especially after dealing with the conflict between him and his father and the expectation of, he is the son of a magister. He needs to continue the bloodline because they are Tevinter, and blood is everything, and being a dreamer or being a mage and whatnot. But for him, it was like there was this guy that he was my companion throughout the entire the progression of Inquisition,
mm-hmm.
and I don't know, he was just like my best bud out of all the companions, and I felt closest to him. And the fact that not only was he leaving for Tevinter, but he was also he was I think the only character who flat out said, "You made me do this. You made me become a better person," and that just resonated with me. And I was just like, I'm not gay. I can't identify with him the same way that other people can, on the sexual identity basis or anything like that. But he is just a wonderful character
mm-hmm.
that I'm so happy I had the chance to enjoy. And I would say I've enjoyed his personal story more than any other character in the Inquisition, but Dragon Age itself.
Really? Well, I got to say, this is a perfect tie-in to our next clip that we're going to play from David Gator. He actually talks about his favorite characters. So that's the one you got to play, not this one, Dave, but the one afterwards, the favorite characters, just because I think that you found a like minds there, Ashe, with the person that wrote these characters. So starting now, David Gator, again, the lead writer from Dragon Age. We're teeing up, calling the radio world, for our interview later. Here he is talking about his favorite characters in Dragon Age Inquisition.
I really enjoy what happened with Cassandra. Cassandra in DAI was a character that I was worried would be inherently unlikable. I think it would be too easy to have somebody whose main focus is their faith, who could come across as being too strident and self-righteous, and those are very unlikable qualities for the most part. So is there a way that I could make a character that discussed faith and without coming across as overly self-righteous, as overly critical of the fact that maybe your faith different from hers,
mm-hmm.
or if you didn't have faith, that she could still acknowledge that, and that didn't threaten her faith. And I wanted to see if I could approach that from a standpoint and make her an endearing, strong character. So I was very happy with where that went. Dorian was another challenge that I really enjoyed. He's another example of a character that instantly had a voice for me, and it was very easy as I was writing him to just chat away in my head and rebel every time I tried to get him to say something he just would not say. And that's always, I think, for any writer, that's a sign that you've successfully created a character where now you've got your split personality going, where they're sitting inside your head, and you can just step into their shoes and immediately have a sense of how they feel about everything. I think that every writer understands what I mean when I say that.
That's again David Gator, the former lead writer on the Dragon Age franchise. Speaking with Ashe, she is a very popular, if not the most popular, YouTuber and online personality that discusses, debates, shares information, tweets out, twitches out as well, all about Dragon Age. You heard what he had to say, the mind behind one of your favorite characters. He talked a lot about making sure that a player could really step into their shoes of these sort of characters. Do you think that he was able to accomplish that?
100%. Actually, I completely forgot about the Cassandra part, because I went into Inquisition thinking that I would have to omit Cassandra every single step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially after Dragon Age 2. She just kind of, I don't know, she rubbed me the wrong way. And I thought, okay, I'm already tired of Eric, and I'm probably going to be tired of Cassandra. And then I went through that entire thing with Cassandra and her, with reading Varric's book and all that. And I'm like, oh my God, I actually really like Cassandra. She's absolutely hilarious. And Dorian was just like, oh, I already mentioned that he's my favorite character out of probably the entire Dragon Age series. But I don't know, like both those characters just worked. And it was really interesting hearing Gator mention about how when writing it, there was a challenge in making sure that, like the voice was organic and you could actually feel, you can hear him to say, not Gator, but like Dorian say, like one way or another. And it kind of, felt like that, like going through it. Nothing felt out of tune. It was like I could understand Cassandra would say that 100% or anything like that. Nothing felt wrong.
That's good to know. I hope that he's listening to this last one to hear one of the super fans that loved it just as much as everyone else. I gotta ask you, when you look at a game like this, do you have your one kind of canon path? This is what happened in Dragon Age. Is that what you have? Especially when you're dealing with Trespasser. There's so many different iterations, so many different divines that could be in charge, and so many different like real world end game situations. Do you have one that's just yours, or do you fool around with a bunch?
I mean, I go through every single one purely for war, like just learning in general, like the whole Liliana Ghost thing. Like I wouldn't have known that if I didn't take a really wrong path. But I definitely have a set canon whenever I play the game. And although like I enjoy a lot of the different stories I played through, I think every single one, in my head, the ones that keep almost everybody alive and kind of keep the narrative going, I think those are the best moments. Like, for instance, the Architect in Dragon Age Awakening, that I know people like to kill him off, but then I get like in the back of my head, maybe he has a point that I don't see yet. And I'm not going to kill him because there's always an opportunity down the line that I'll just go, oh God, you were right. And actually, after Trespasser, I'm right there. I think the Architect isn't completely wrong, but I get that a lot. I get that a lot, but like I think about that a lot with my specific canon.
Well, little did you know, according to this interview with Mr. Gator, I know you had a chance to listen, so probably you do know. He talks a lot about that, about stuff that was cut, and one of the things that was cut, unfortunately, might have been that resolution.
The assault on Adamant Fortress also went through a lot of different versions. There was a point there where it didn't involve the Fate at all. You fell into the abyss, and you ended up in the Deep Road.
Really?
Yeah, you had to sort of find your way out through the Deep Roads, and you encountered the intelligent darkspawn from Awakening, and so there were all sort of different versions of every story. And I mean, it all went. I think the iteration was actually a good thing, because when I think back on some of those things, it's like, well, I say that, and it's like you could think immediately, oh, I can imagine what that would have been. Yeah, just try imagining what it would have been, but I imagine it kind of sucking, because that's generally why it changed. That was the iteration. It was a healthy thing for the most part. I mean, there was less. Let's cut this because we don't have time, and more. Let's cut this because it's just not working.
My obnoxious laugh aside, in that interview, he talked a lot about how fans should, kind of appreciate the fact that it might not have been as good. But I don't know. I listen to that again and think, I don't care if it was bad. I would have loved to see, because just like you, that character, the architect from I believe it was a DLC for the first Dragon Age, really, really resonated with me and did some lore shakeups, kind of like Solus did in this Trespasser DLC. Imagine, the next game coming out and there wouldn't be a Solus in it. That's almost how I felt with this. Listening to that now, do you think that he made the right decision? You mentioned yourself you would have loved to have that. What do you think? Do you agree with him that if it's bad, don't put it in, or do you agree with me?
So I'm so glad that he mentioned that to you. I was like, the moment I heard that they were actually considering talking or they were going to consider showing the Awakened Darkspawn, I kind of perked up, and I was like, wait, what? And I got really excited at the thought, but I feel like it would have gone down a completely different path, and that whole part about being in the Fade and talking to the divine and just having the reflections of not only what's the best way of putting it? Dragon Age in general has been with Inquisition. It's been about identity, and especially with religion. And I think Gator talked about it at length, but a lot of it was like trying to figure out what you believe in. And especially for a character, for instance, I'm an Inquisitor that was like, oh, I am Andraste's chosen, I am the herald of Andraste, blah, blah, blah. And the moment whenever it happened in the Fade that I got completely called out, and it was like, oh no, I just kind of grabbed the orb from Corypheus and called it a day. Like, that was a good moment for me. And I think if we would have went into the deep roads, I think it would have been interesting. Okay, that's an understatement. That would have been awesome. But if I have a little bit of faith that, they cut it and they changed it because there was no way that they could capitalize on it in a way that we would be happy with. So I'm okay with it, even knowing now that it was almost a thing. I'm just hoping that it's addressed later on so that when we play the game, when we play Dragon Age 4 or 5 or what have you, we'll sit there and be like, oh man, the moment when they actually bring in the Awakened Darkspawn, that's a good moment.
You're a little more forgiving than I guess, when it comes to that.
I'm sorry.
We got to ask, the big thing about this game, about the DLC, was Solus, what that character represented, what he meant not only for the Inquisitor and all of your companions, but for the entire universe, our entire understanding of the established rules of this world, changed in a 4-minute conversation with a little elf at the end of this. How many hours could we have played of all 3 games? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Everything we understood changed in a few minutes. People got to see your expression when that happened because you're streaming this stuff live. I can't imagine what that was like. Can you take us through going inside your head when a lot of this was being shared?
There was a lot of shock. There was a lot of awe. There was a lot of, are you kidding me? And no, I was in a very incredulous moment whenever Solus decided to lay it out there. I didn't think that. I mean, I went through the library, and I looked through every single piece of lore that I could find, every single book, even Sandal's journal, which totally, oh my gosh. But anyway, my excitement was pretty obvious throughout that entire thing. And whenever Solus actually just said, I was the one who made the veil, I just kind of sat there and went, oh God, it's really happening right now. Like, I didn't expect such a revelation. Like, for Alathon, just almost all the secrets just to be shown through that DLC. And I wasn't I was kind of mentally prepared for it, but at the end of it, I was like, this is just too much. And I had a mental overload at the end of it. Oh, man. But I don't even know what to think about it.
Well, now, see, it did, like David Gator said, it did leave a lot more questions than we got answers. And let's just deal with what those Solus revelations were. If you could, for those of us that don't have your gift of gab, how would you summarize the what the veil is in the world of Thedas?
I wish I had that conversation recorded where he explains literally everything in 2 minutes. Not even 2 minutes, maybe a minute.
Yeah.
I think you got that scene too, the one where he just like it's with the Inquisitor who just hates him, and he's just like, "Here's the cliff notes, just deal with it."
Yeah, when you say I don't want to hear a long-winded thing, but for those, let's hear your iteration of that.
So the veil is the separation of think of it as it's like a curtain, but you can't see it. You can feel it. That's just the best way of putting it. But it exists between the physical world and the metaphysical world of the Fade, and realm, not world. I don't want to say it like that. And there's the cause of the veil basically nullified magic for those who are in the physical Fade. It's like the way that he phrases it is walking through a sea of tranquil, because it really killed the magical prowess of those who were in the world, for elves, for possibly humans, for dwarves, and all of them. And he summoned up the veil. I imagine it wasn't in like one moment, but I'm sure it took like maybe a couple of years or something like that. But the way that it was described is he went to Skyhold, he lifted up the veil. It caused a huge situation where the Evanuris, or the Elven Pantheon, the Elven gods, the ones who said, hey, we have all the power and we can create everything, but really they were just really, really powerful mages. They were trapped behind the veil, and they were blocked from the physical world. And essentially, it saved the world and killed it at the same time. And now he's making bad life choices in order to fix his mistake again. That's the best way I can.
Oh, well, I think, hey,
it.
well put. I gotta say, so basically, it's completely different than what we understood and what at least we were alluded to of what the veil was. Most of what we heard, and I love the division between any sort of creation myths that we have around in our current world, depending on where you are in the world. Many different cultures have different ideas of how this universe started. What does this do? This new revelation, this Solus Elvan, put up a big curtain and now all the magic's gone and people are upset. What does that do to the established chantry? We just played a game where we were the embodiment of this righteous indignation of the chantry, and now we're discovering that what exactly? I'd love to know your take. Do you think this means that there isn't a maker? What does this mean in your eyes in this world?
When I consider Dragon Age, I always take it from like every single protagonist that I have is atheist, and by canon, I guess you could say. And I don't like to think like, oh, the maker is real. Oh, the Andraste did all these things and whatnot. Although I have very different things about Andraste in my head now that Trespasser's done, but that's a different story. With the chantry, the way I see it is it has a lot of parallels with current day Christianity, where a lot of it was not written by the prophets or Andraste herself or anything like that. It's made by humans, by people who were just people who wrote about their experiences, and it with a long line of telephone, just like those elves who believed in the pantheon and the elven gods. It just kind of got construed over time. And I'm not saying the maker doesn't exist, because I'm sure someone had to make the earth, had to make Thedas, but I don't believe in the capacity that there's one maker who created everything, who is doing everything and influencing it. But the good thing about Dragon Age, though, is that they give you the option of believing. And you don't have to believe it word for word, like text to text. Like you don't have to believe in every single thing that the Chant of Light says. But you can just take certain things to heart. You can believe in certain things. And that's the good part about it. You can just affix to what kind of theories you want to roll with, what kind of ideologies you want to roll with, and apply it to your Inquisitor, your Hawk, or your Warden.
I agree, but it does, it's hard to do that. And that's maybe what I want to talk about here. It's hard to have that sense of choice and the power behind your choices when all of a sudden Jesus 2.0 in the name of Solus comes by and explains to you very succinctly that, wait a second, there is the Maker in the Golden City and all this other stuff with the stuff that happened to Vinter. Maybe not the case. I did it to get rid of these bad people. Do you think that kind of choice, that when they share that information that's so absolute, that it takes away from some of the choices we had as the Inquisitor, some of the more difficult choices maybe? Because like you said, we were operating in our own way. Most of them start off as atheists. They try to understand this world. We're often very the other, being introduced to this world. Now we're figuring out that might not have been the case. Do you think that this character, that Solus, takes away some of our choice? Or do you think, that's this kind of worth it just for the lore?
I don't think he takes away the choices that we make. I think, if anything, he gives a lot of context to the decisions so that we can look at our stuff and go, oh, I was a little bit of an idiot there. Mm-hmm. But, there's still consequences, big and small, for the different things that we make. And as far as Solus is concerned, yes, he just dropped a huge bomb on us. And and now we have completely different thoughts and feelings about what happened with Vinter, what happened with the elves and the Evanuris and all that jazz. But in my head, I don't think he's telling us everything. And he even says to a friend or a romance Inquisitor, what was the exact phrase? I respect you too much, or something like that.
It did kind of seem like,
won't tell you.
Yeah, I could tell you everything right now, but we need Dragon Age 4. It kind of like it did. I had that same moment because your Inquisitor asks some very obvious questions like, what do you mean it's going to destroy my world? Why would that happen at all? And Solus just kind of winks like, uh-oh, can't tell you yet. That for me kind of, I felt the frustration that my big Canary Inquisitor felt at that moment when he was asking, like, no, you need to give me a little more explanation so I have something to run off of. Did you actually feel it was enough, or did you feel like me? Because I again, from this interview and talking with you, I get the sense that you're a much more forgiving Dragon Age player than I.
Forgiving? I think it's just that, for me, I can find the different parts in the lore that may or may not represent or support other different parts of the lore. So I just see the connections, and I can think, actually, you can run with this, and I completely understand. Mm-hmm. There are very few moments in Dragon Age where I'm just like, that's not supported by the lore, not at all. Mm-hmm. Because for me, the way that I look at it, not just like in BioWare's position, but just in game development in general, I don't see where they're taking the game in the next installment. I don't see what's going to happen in 2 games from now. There is a path, especially in Dragon Age, that they want to take, and they have been planning not exactly like a five-game plan, but they know what's going to happen, and I don't see that yet. But like I mentioned with the Architect, I now completely changed my mind because I played the Descent DLC. I actually support some of what he said, and it's just like, if it weren't for Inquisition, I would not have said that at all. I would have still been like, the Architect's a bad guy. So for me, I'm a little bit more forgiving because there's no way that I know, like, what's going to happen 2 games down.
Again, we're speaking with Ashe, the YouTube and Twitch commentator, talking all about Dragon Age. I call her the unofficial spokesperson. I wanted to ask you, when you're looking at a game like this, and there's some clear indicators of where we're going and what's going to happen next. As someone that does this for a living, or at least in some capacity for a living, do you speculate on where we're going next, and where do you think it'll be? What do you think we'll be doing in the Dragon Age world?
Oh, 100%.
There we go.
Yeah. I mean, like, they already gave us very obvious hints. It's very obvious that they're going to make us go to Deventer, which a lot of players have been asking for. I mean, obviously, because they're a public trading company or whatnot, and they can't actually say, hey, we have another game because it's not greenlit yet. But for the next Dragon Age 4, it's very obvious we're going to Deventer. That one key thing that the Inquisitor says about they need to find someone who Solus doesn't know. Mm-hmm. That just screams, hey, we're going to work for the Inquisition as an agent. So it's very obvious how Dragon Age is going to be set up. And also, we're going to be fighting Solus, but I think the curious thing about it is that the Inquisitor can actually say, I agree with your goal. And Solus, of course, just turns you down. He's like, nope, I need to do this on my own because whatever. But in my head, I think it's going to shift into something completely different where we can actually side with the antagonist, which is something that didn't exactly exist with Origins or 2. We couldn't exactly side with them. Yeah, we could side with the Templars, but you never really truly side with Meredith because she's crazy. But I think that's where it's going to be, where we're going to have enemies that we can actually sympathize with. I think that's the best way. Something that has been lightly touched in early in the Dragon Age series, and it's just going to shift into Dragon Age 4, Dragon Age 5, and what have you. So that's where I see the game going.
Finally, again, this has been such a long journey. You've talked about it before, that this is, you saw this from its beginning. You've been with it for so long. You've amassed a large community, and you feel like a big part of that community. How do you feel, and how do you think they handled the completion of the Inquisitor's story? We're out of hand. The Inquisitor says him or herself. Yeah, there we go. They say themselves, my adventuring days are done. I got a very clear sense that, they are going to be maybe the grizzled leader sitting at a chair. Like you said, maybe we're working for them in Dragon Age 4. But do you feel that they really completed the story? How does that story feel then now that it's done also for you as someone that's been so involved for so long?
I think they did a great job completing it. If it weren't for Trespasser, I probably wouldn't have said that. But Trespasser felt like the epilogue that needed to happen. It felt like it was a nice... The 2-year warp was really good. The completion and also like the continuation of the character stories, I really like that, especially with what happened with Dorian, that he actually makes a group into Venter and he continues everything with his stuff and his ideals. And the other characters with what's happening with the Divine and what Cassandra does with the Seekers, you just get that sense that your decisions resonate in someone, in the character, and you can actually see the start of that. And I'm so glad that we got to see that before we completely closed the book on Inquisition. And for me, I'm really happy the way that it ended.
But you're not going anywhere.
Made me feel cry.
Oh, well, I thought I've looked a lot at what you've been doing, and people like to follow you, I think, not only because you're giving insight into the lore, but with a lot of this, it's you. They want to feel like they know you, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, how does it feel to know that there's so many people out there that feel kind of just like you about all this, that they feel that sorrow, that happy sadness almost. I'd love to know what you think.
It's a wonderful feeling. And I just realized how cheesy it sounded, but truly, for the people that I've talked with, and, I've had a lot of really awesome conversation with people and had a lot of heated discussions with people regarding Dragon Age or Byra or what have you. But the thing is that the community itself is just so supportive, yes, but also just everyone can talk with each other and be on the same wavelength, because they know the content, they know the lore, they know the story, they know the characters, and it's just a completely different feel because everyone's on the same page in some capacity, and they can share that with another person. So, I mean, it's such a wonderful feeling that I have yet to find in another community for any game. I mean, there are a lot of really good games out there, but for one that is so strong in decision making and with character development, all that jazz, it's Bioware has a very unique community, and I'm just really happy to be part of it.
All right, we'll end with that. Thank you so much again. Ashe, Lady Insanity, we're going with that as well because that's there. Great personality that's been dealing with these games, the Dragon Age games, the Mass Effect games, everything BioWare for years now. If you type in Dragon Age videos on Google, chances are you're going to see something of hers. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
All right. And again, you've been waiting for it. We teased it in this great talk with Ashe. Our final take, our last bit. I know you guys have wanted the Patrick Weeks interview, but that was a 4-hour interview where we talked about, Mass Effect and everything in Dragon Age. It's still going to be time, folks. So just hold up. I'm giving you David Gator. Come on. But he's coming up now, his final interview with us. He's the lead writer, was a lead writer on Dragon Age, talking all about Dragon Age Inquisition. Here it is.
Something's on its way.